I retired and bought a lakeside resort in Wisconsin to finally find peace. Then my daughter called. "Dad, my in-laws are moving into your log cabins. If you don't like it, sell the house." I didn't argue. After they arrived, my house practically became theirs. But they didn't know I had investigated all their fraudulent activities. Soon the battle began. The FBI would be knocking, and I would take it all back. Hello everyone, drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. You heard the hook. My daughter's in-laws wanted my property, and I stayed silent. Why I was 10 steps ahead. Quick note, this is fiction crafted for entertainment. Characters and events are imagined, but the themes might resonate. Let's begin. I signed the papers on a Monday morning in October, sitting across from Dorothy Williams in her small office above the hardware store in Bayfield. The autumn light filtered through old windows, catching dust motes that drifted like lazy thoughts. 39 years of paychecks, 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and careful budgeting had come down to this moment, a single signature that transferred $385,000 from my account and made me the owner of the Pinewood Lodge. Dorothy slid the keys across her desk. They were heavier than I expected, brass and worn smooth from decades of use. "It's a beautiful property, Mr. Miller," she said, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of someone who'd closed hundreds of deals. "The Johnsons ran it well for 23 years before they retired. You're getting a piece of Lake Superior history." I closed my fist around the keys, feeling their weight settle into my palm. 39 years as a civil engineer designing highways and bridges that would outlast me by generations. I'd built roads that carried families to their futures, but I'd never had a place of my own that felt like the destination. Until now. The drive from Milwaukee had taken 4 hours, but I'd needed every minute to let it sink in. The retirement party was 3 weeks behind me now. The handshakes, the engraved plaque, the awkward speeches from younger engineers who saw me as a relic from before computer modeling. They meant well, but none of them understood what it meant to draft by hand, to feel the weight of a pencil translating mathematics into something real and solid. I thanked Dorothy and walked back to my truck, a Ford F-150 I'd bought used 12 years ago and maintained with the same methodical care I'd given to everything in my life. The bed was packed with boxes, clothes, books, my grandfather's fishing rods, and a toolbox that had followed me through 3 different firms. Bayfield was quiet this time of year. The summer tourists had long since packed up their kayaks and left the North Shore to locals. I drove through town, slowly taking in the marina where sailboats bobbed in their slips, the apple orchards, heavy with late-season fruit, and the fish houses where commercial fishermen still worked the lake the way their fathers and grandfathers had. I stopped at Linda's Bait and Tackle on the edge of town. The bell above the door announced me with a cheerful jingle. Linda Harris looked up from behind the counter where she'd been organizing lures into a display case. She was probably in her mid-50s, weathered in the way that people who spend their lives near water tend to be tanned skin, laugh lines, hands that knew work. "You must be the new owner of the lodge," she said, smiling. "Dorothy mentioned you'd be coming through." "Sean Miller," I said, extending my hand. "Just signed the papers." "Linda Harris. Been running this place since '87. She wiped her hands on her jeans and shook firmly. "The Pinewood's a good piece of property. You planning to reopen the resort?" "No," I said, surprised by how certain I felt. "Just looking for a place to retire, somewhere quiet." She nodded approvingly. "Well, you picked the right spot. Lake Superior doesn't suffer fools, but if you respect her, she'll give you peace like nowhere else." She pulled a business card from behind the register. "Stop by when you're settled. Best minnows on the North Shore, and I've got tackle that'll put you onto walleye and northern pike." I thanked her and continued north. The road narrowed, hugging the shoreline. Cell service had dropped to nothing about 10 miles back. No more email notifications, no more conference calls, no more junior engineers asking me to review their calculations. Just the hum of the engine and the occasional cry of gulls overhead. Then I saw it. Lake Superior opened up before me like something out of a dream I'd forgotten I had. The water stretched endless and blue-gray, catching the afternoon sun in 1,000 shifting patterns. I'd seen pictures, of course, everyone had. But pictures couldn't capture the sheer presence of it, the way it made you feel both insignificant and strangely at home. I pulled over at a scenic overlook and stepped out of the truck. The wind carried the smell of cold water and pine. In the distance, a freighter moved slowly across the horizon, bound for Duluth or Thunder Bay. A bald eagle circled overhead, riding thermals with effortless grace. I stood there for a long time, letting the wind pull at my jacket, feeling something inside me unclench for the first time in years. The Pinewood Lodge sat a mile off the main road, down a gravel drive that wound through white pine and paper birch. The main lodge was exactly as Dorothy had described it, a 2-story cedar building with a wraparound porch, large windows facing the lake, and a stone chimney rising from the center. The 6 guest cabins ringed the property like satellites, each one a miniature version of the main lodge. Behind everything, a workshop large enough to park 2 cars stood with its doors closed, waiting. I parked in front of the main lodge and killed the engine. 39 years, $385,000. And now this. I sat in the cab of my truck, keys in my lap, looking out at the property that was mine. The lake lapped quietly at the shore. The pine trees swayed in the breeze. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. For the first time since I could remember, I had nowhere I needed to be, no deadline pressing, no project requiring my attention. Just this place, this moment, and the rest of my life, stretching out before me like an open road. I'd finally earned the right to travel. I opened the truck door and stepped out onto my land. The main lodge smelled like cedar and thyme. I stood in the entrance, taking it in. The space opened wide commercial kitchen to my left. Great room straight ahead, with windows framing Lake Superior stone fireplace to my right, and a small office beyond. Exposed beams stretched 20 feet overhead. 39 years as an engineer had taught me that systems matter. I didn't just move in, I organized. Tools went to the workshop, arranged by size and function on pegboards I mounted myself. Books went to the office shelves, sorted by subject. Kitchen supplies found labeled cabinets. Clothes went upstairs, hung and folded with the precision I'd used for survey data. By day's end, I was tired in a way that felt honest, physical. The second day I explored. The 6 guest cabins were smaller than expected, maybe 400 square feet each, with a queen bed, tiny kitchenette, and weathered bathroom. They'd need work eventually, but for now they were dry and secure. Perfect for storage. The possibilities felt endless. The third day I discovered the dock, 30 feet of pressure-treated lumber extending into the lake weathered to soft gray. I sat at the end, with my grandfather's fishing rod, a thermos of coffee, and no agenda. Water lapped against pilings with ancient rhythm. A pair of loons called across the bay, that haunting sound people mistake for loneliness, but is really conversation. An eagle circled overhead, then dove toward the water. It came up with a fish struggling in its talons, wings beating hard toward the trees. I sat there 3 hours and didn't think about highways once. All of this, the lodge, the cabins, the dock, the endless view was mine. Just mine. No shareholders, no project managers, no deadlines. After 39 years of compromise and committee decisions, I finally had space that answered to no one but me. That evening I called Amanda. She answered on the 4th ring. "Dad, hey, I'm kind of in the middle of something. I just wanted to let you know I'm settled in. The place is beautiful. You should visit." "Yeah, maybe." That distracted quality I'd learned to recognize scrolling while talking half present. Listen, I really need to. Amanda, it's been 3 weeks since the retirement party. A pause, then with an edge. I know, Dad. Things have just been busy. Busy. She'd been saying that a lot lately. Her real estate job should have slowed with the cooling market, but every time I called, she was busy. Scott was busy. Always in the middle of something I couldn't pin down. The offer stands. You and Scott are welcome anytime. Sure, I've got to go. She hung up before I could say goodbye. I sat on the porch that night wrapped in fleece against October chill, trying not to worry. Amanda was 29. She had her own life. That was normal, but something in her voice felt off. The next evening, my phone rang at 8. Amanda. You bought a whole resort. No hello. That's ridiculous, Dad. Way too much space for one person. The hairs on my neck prickled. It's what I wanted. I've been planning this for 5 years. Roger and Carol need a place to stay. They're having financial trouble. We thought they could move into one of the cabins. Just temporarily. Roger and Carol Taylor Scott's parents. I'd met them twice at the engagement and wedding. Both times they'd struck me as people who smiled too much and asked too many questions about what things cost. Amanda, I just moved in. I'm not running a boarding house. You have 6 empty cabins just sitting there. Because they're mine. This is my retirement. My space. Scott and I have already decided. That phrase she'd been using more and more, as if Scott's opinion carried more weight than mine, her own father. Then Scott and you have decided wrong. The answer is no. Silence. Then her voice came back colder than I'd ever heard it. You're being selfish. You buy this huge place and won't even help family. Fine, sell it. Come back to Milwaukee where we can keep an eye on you. The words hit like a slap. Keep an eye on me. As if I were a child. As if 39 years of building bridges and raising a daughter alone after her mother died counted for nothing. Goodbye, Amanda. I ended the call. The lodge was silent. Outside, the lake moved under starlight, indifferent to human drama. A loon called once, then went quiet. I sat by the cold fireplace, phone in my hand, feeling something I hadn't felt in all my years of engineering, a foundation shifting beneath me, cracks appearing where there should have been solid ground. This wasn't my daughter, not the Amanda I'd raised. Something was very wrong. Morning came cold and clear, the kind of October day where your breath fogs and the lake looks like hammered steel. I made coffee in the commercial kitchen, standing at the counter while it brewed, watching a freighter inch across the horizon. My phone sat silent on the granite countertop. No calls from Amanda, no apologies. Just the echo of her words. Come back to Milwaukee where we can keep an eye on you. I'd spent 39 years solving problems. Bridges that wouldn't collapse, highway interchanges that moved traffic efficiently, drainage systems that prevented flooding. Every problem had a solution if you gathered enough data and applied the right methodology. This was a problem. So I did what engineers do, I researched. By noon, I had 3 browser windows open on my laptop and a legal pad covered in notes. Wisconsin property law was clear. Once you owned property free and clear, which I did, you had absolute right to control who occupied it. There was no such thing as squatters' rights in cases where the owner was actively residing on the property and maintaining it. Adverse possession required years of unchallenged occupation, not weeks. But there were murkier areas. Zoning laws. Commercial versus residential use. The Pinewood Lodge had operated as a business for 23 years. If someone argued, I was still running it commercially, renting cabins, for instance. They might have grounds to claim I was discriminating against family members as potential tenants. I called my insurance agent, a woman named Patricia, who'd handled my renter's policy in Milwaukee for 15 years. "Sean, congratulations on the retirement," she said warmly. "What can I do for you?" "I need to update my policy. The property is a former resort, but I'm using it strictly as a primary residence. I want that documented clearly. No rental income, no guest bookings. None, it's my home. The guest cabins are for storage and personal use only. I'll update the classification today and email you confirmation. Residential only owner occupied. Thank you, Patricia." One vulnerability closed. That afternoon, I drove into Bayfield. The town was quiet, preparing for winter. Some shops had already put up their shutters for the season. I parked in front of Peterson's Hardware, a building that looked like it had stood since before statehood. George Peterson was behind the counter reading a copy of the Duluth News-Tribune. He looked up when the bell announced me late 50s salt and pepper beard flannel shirt worn soft from washing. "Mr. Miller, Linda said you'd be settling in. What can I help you with?" "I need security cameras. 3 of them. Wireless with cloud storage." His eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. "We've got a good system. Lorex brand. Motion-activated night vision connects to your phone. You planning to catch someone stealing your firewood?" "Something like that." He didn't press. Small-town courtesy meant not asking questions you didn't need answers to. He sold me 3 cameras mounting brackets and batteries. I paid cash. Back at the lodge, I spent 2 hours installing them. One at the main entrance to the property covering the gravel drive. One at the gate where the drive met the main road. One at the dock angled to cover the shoreline approach. Each camera linked to an app on my phone that would alert me to any movement. I tested them by walking the perimeter. My phone buzzed 3 times. 3 notifications: motion detected at main entrance. Motion detected at gate. Motion detected at dock. Perfect. The next morning, I drove south to Ashland. The law office of Catherine Reynolds occupied the 2nd floor of a brick building downtown, above a bakery that made the whole stairwell smell like cinnamon rolls. The receptionist, a young woman with purple-tinted hair and multiple ear piercings, led me to a small conference room. Kate Reynolds was younger than I'd expected from her voice on the phone. 43, maybe 44, in a charcoal suit that said she took her work seriously. She shook my hand with a grip that matched. "Mr. Miller, you said on the phone you were having family trouble." I laid it out plainly. The purchase. Amanda's call. The demand to house Roger and Carol. The threat to make me sell and return to Milwaukee. Kate listened without interrupting, taking notes in a leather folio. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "First, the good news. You own the property outright. No mortgage, no liens. Your daughter has 0 legal claim to it, or any say in how you use it. Wisconsin doesn't have filial responsibility laws that would require you to house adult children or their in-laws." And the bad news. The bad news is that family dynamics aren't always about what's legal. They're about pressure manipulation and emotional leverage. She tapped her pen against her notes. "The threat to make you sell concerns me. That's not how adult children typically speak to their parents, unless something else is driving the behavior. You think someone's influencing her. I think it's worth knowing who you're really dealing with. These in-laws, Roger and Carol Taylor. What do you know about them?" "Almost nothing. Met them twice, they seemed off, too interested in money." Kate pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "This is a colleague of mine. Private investigator. She's discreet, thorough, and not cheap. But if you want to know what's actually going on, she can find out." I looked at the card. Diana Rodriguez, licensed private investigator. "How much for a retainer?" I asked Kate. $2,500 will cover initial consultation and documentation. I'll draft a letter to your daughter establishing your legal position and your explicit denial of permission for anyone to occupy your property. If this escalates, we'll be ready. I wrote the check. That night I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon, something I rarely did, but the day seemed to warrant it. The cameras were live green lights blinking in the darkness. My phone was beside me, ringer on. It rang at 9:30, unknown number, Milwaukee area code. I answered without speaking, a man's voice, rough and deliberate. "You think cameras are going to stop us, old man? We know where you live. We know you're alone. Smart people cooperate. Think about it." The line went dead. I sat very still, adrenaline washing through me like cold water. Not Amanda's voice, not Scott's, someone else, someone who knew about the cameras already, which meant they'd been watching the property. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was organized. I pulled up Diana Rodriguez's number and typed a message, "Need to hire you. Urgent. We'll call first thing tomorrow." Then I sat in the darkness watching the lake and waiting, knowing with absolute certainty that I couldn't handle this alone. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Friday afternoon, I was splitting firewood behind the workshop when my phone buzzed. The camera app flashed motion detected at gate. I set down the maul and pulled up the feed. A black SUV was turning onto my property. Rental plates, Illinois, not Wisconsin. Illinois. My gut tightened. I wiped sawdust from my hands and walked toward the main lodge, keeping the SUV in sight as it rolled slowly down the gravel drive. Whoever was driving wasn't in a hurry. They were looking around, assessing. The vehicle stopped in the circle drive in front of the main lodge, engine idling for a moment before shutting off. 3 doors opened simultaneously. Roger Taylor stepped out first from the driver's side. Late 60s, soft around the middle, wearing a polo shirt and khakis that looked too new, the kind of outfit someone wears when they're trying to look respectable. Carol emerged from the passenger side, smaller, with bleached blonde hair and oversized sunglasses despite the overcast sky. And from the back seat, Scott, 30 years old, square-jawed, with the kind of easy smile that probably worked well in whatever sales job he claimed to have. He stretched as he got out, like he'd just arrived at a vacation rental. All 3 of them turned slowly, taking in the main lodge, the 6 guest cabins arranged around the property, the dock extending into the lake. Roger's eyes moved with a predator's calculation, not admiring the view, but inventorying assets. I walked out onto the porch, stopping at the top of the steps. "You're on private property." Roger's face split into a wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sean, good to finally get up here. Amanda said you'd agreed to let us stay for a bit while we sort out our housing situation." "Amanda said no such thing." The smile faltered slightly. "Now I think there's been a miscommunication." "There's been no miscommunication. I told Amanda no. I'm telling you no. This is my home, not a hotel." Scott stepped forward, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual. "Come on, sir. You've got to understand our position here. We're family." He gestured toward the cabins. "And you've got 6 empty cabins just sitting there. We're only asking for 1. The words hit like a physical thing. 6 empty cabins. Amanda hadn't told him that. She'd barely seen pictures of the place. She couldn't have described the layout in detail, which meant Scott or Roger or both had been researching the property, looking at satellite images, maybe even driving past before today. "How do you know how many cabins I have?" Scott blinked, caught. "Amanda mentioned." "Amanda's never been here. Try again." Roger stepped in smoothly. "Hun, we looked at the real estate listing online. Nothing sinister about it. Beautiful property. Really beautiful." He spread his hands in a gesture meant to appear reasonable. "Look, we're not asking for charity. We can help with maintenance upkeep. Carol's great with gardens. I've got construction experience. construction experience. I kept my voice level. On what kind? A flash of something in Roger's eyes. Annoyance. General contracting, residential work. And where are you working now? Between projects at the moment. I see. I descended one step. Here's what I see, Roger. I see 3 people who drove 4 hours in a rental car with Illinois plates, not your own vehicle, which makes me wonder why. I see people who know details about my property they shouldn't know. And I see people who are standing on my land after being told explicitly not to come here. Carol pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and for a moment I thought she might actually be crying, until I realized the tears were too perfect, too timed. Please, she said, her voice breaking. We have nowhere else to go. Our daughter and son-in-law won't take us in. We thought family would help family. I'm not your family. You're Amanda's father. Carol's voice rose, the tears flowing now. Doesn't that mean anything? We're the grandparents of your future grandchildren. The manipulation was so naked, it was almost insulting. I'd spent 39 years in engineering firms watching people jockey for position play, politics manufacture crises to get what they wanted. This was amateur hour. You need to leave. Now. Roger's reasonable mask slipped. His jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, old man. When this blows up in your face, when Amanda realizes what kind of person her father really is, don't come crying to us. I'll take my chances. Scott moved toward the porch. Maybe we could just look at one of the cabins. Stop. I didn't raise my voice, but something in my tone made him freeze. I pointed to the camera mounted above the porch. Then everything you've said and done since you arrived has been recorded. Video and audio. If any of you set foot on this property again without my explicit permission, I will have you arrested for trespassing. Scott's easy smile vanished. He looked at Roger. Roger stared at the camera, then back at me. For just a moment, the mask dropped completely. What I saw underneath was cold, calculating, and very, very angry. You don't know who you're dealing with, he said quietly. Neither do you. We stood in tableau for a long moment, me on the porch, them in the drive, the lake wind moving through the pines. Then Roger jerked his head toward the SUV. Let's go. They climbed back in without another word. The engine started. The SUV reversed, turned and rolled back down the gravel drive. I watched until it disappeared past the gate. But I didn't relax. I pulled up the camera app and checked the feed from town. 20 minutes later, the black SUV passed the hardware store, heading not south toward Illinois, but north, deeper into Bayfield. They weren't leaving. They were staying. I opened my phone and called Kate Reynolds. They came to the property, I said when she answered. All 3 of them made threats. I've got it on camera. Send me the footage, and Sean, don't go anywhere alone. If they're still in town, they're not done. I hung up and stood on the porch as dusk settled over the lake. Somewhere out there, Roger and Scott were planning their next move, and I needed to be ready when they made it. The thing about building bridges, you have to know where the stress points are, where pressure will be applied, where something will break if you don't reinforce it first. I was about to find out where mine were. Saturday morning, I met Diana Rodriguez at her office in Ashland. Kate had made the introduction 15 years with Wisconsin State Police, now private, thorough, and discreet. Diana was mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a blazer. Her office had the organized efficiency of someone who dealt in facts. She gestured to a chair. Kate briefed me. Tell me everything about the Taylors. I spent 20 minutes laying it out. The wedding, Amanda's change after marriage, Scott's knowledge of the 6 cabins, the rental SUV with Illinois plates, Roger's cold eyes when his mask slipped. Diana took notes without interrupting. When I finished, how much did the resort cost? $385,000. She underlined it twice. I'll run comprehensive backgrounds on all 3 criminal records, civil judgments, bankruptcy, employment, history, digital footprint. 48 hours. My retainer is $3,000. I wrote the check. She walked me to the door. Mr. Miller, be prepared for the possibility that your daughter isn't just being influenced. She might be complicit. The words hit like a fist to the chest. The weekend crawled. I tried to stay busy, organized the workshop, repaired dock railings, stacked firewood, but my mind kept circling back to that black SUV, to Scott's 2 casual questions, to Roger's threats. Monday morning at 10, Diana called. We need to talk. Can you come to the office? Tell me now. A pause. This isn't phone conversation material. Diana, please. Another pause. All right, sit down. I was already on the porch, coffee growing cold. Go ahead. Roger Taylor. 3 felony fraud convictions spanning 15 years. Real estate scam in Indiana, 1995, 18 months. Construction fraud in Ohio. 2003, took deposits for work never performed, 2 years. Investor fraud, 2018, fake commercial development, 5 years, but paroled after 3. My hand tightened on the phone. Civil judgments total $340,000 across multiple victims. He filed bankruptcy in 2019, discharged most of it. Between convictions, other schemes that never resulted in charges. The man's a career criminal. Carol. 2 arrests for check fraud in the 90s. Misdemeanors, probation. She's not the architect, she's an accomplice. And Scott. Diana's voice went flat. Scott Anderson doesn't exist before age 23. No birth certificate, no school records, no employment history. The Social Security number traces to a Scott Andrew Anderson, who died in a car accident in 2012 at 19. Your son-in-law is using a dead person's identity. The lake tilted. I set my coffee down, afraid I'd drop it. Identity theft, I managed. Almost certainly. I'm running down his real identity, but it'll take time. She paused. Mr. Miller, there's more. I found 2 families in Ohio and 1 in Indiana with similar stories. Adult children marry into the Taylor family orbit, sometimes Scott, sometimes a cousin. Within a year, the new spouse pressures their parents for property or money. In 2 cases, elderly parents ended up in nursing homes while their houses were sold. In the 3rd, a widower's life insurance disappeared into LLCs that dissolved before anyone could trace it. Pattern recognition. My engineering brain locked onto it immediately. It's a long con, Diana continued. They identify targets people with assets but limited family support. They insert Scott through dating apps, work connections, fast relationship, marriage within a year. Then the squeeze begins. And Amanda, your daughter got her real estate license recently. She has access to property records, sales data. When you purchased a $385,000 resort with cash that became public record, retired widower, 1 adult child, asset rich, you became a perfect target. The pattern crystallized with brutal clarity. Scott appearing right after Amanda's license. The quick relationship. Marriage in 10 months. Diana. My voice came out rough. Is my daughter a victim or a partner? I don't know yet. With your permission, I'll start financial forensics on Amanda and Scott's accounts, credit cards, spending patterns. If she's being manipulated, the data will show it. If she's complicit, she let that hang. Do it, whatever it costs. I'll have preliminary results in a week. Mr. Miller, I'm sorry. No, It's what I needed to know. We hung up. I sat on the porch for a long time, phone in my lap. A pair of loons floated past, their haunting call, sounding mournful now, instead of peaceful. My daughter had married into a criminal enterprise. Whether she knew it or not, whether she'd been seduced or recruited, she'd become a weapon aimed at me. $385,000. 39 years of saving. Roger Taylor thought he could take it through manipulation and pressure. He'd miscalculated. Because after 4 decades as an engineer, I knew how to see structures clearly, where the supports were, where the weaknesses lay, how to reinforce what needed protecting, and how to dismantle what was in the way. I walked to the end of the dock. The afternoon sun broke through clouds, turning the lake silver. Somewhere Diana was digging deeper. Somewhere Roger and Scott were planning their next move. And somewhere in all this was Amanda, 29 years old, perhaps lost in ways I hadn't begun to understand. The worst truth was still coming. But I'd be ready when it arrived. The email arrived Thursday morning at 7:15, while I was watching fog lift off the lake. The subject line made my stomach drop. I'm sorry. I opened it. Mr. Miller, I've completed the financial forensics on Amanda and Scott Anderson's accounts. What I found is worse than I expected. I'm attaching a detailed report, but I wanted to give you a summary first so you're prepared. Your daughter is in serious financial trouble. Diana Rodriguez. I clicked the attachment. The PDF loaded slowly page by page. When the numbers came into focus, I had to read them twice to believe them. Total debt, $183,000. The breakdown was methodical, clinical, 7 credit cards, all maxed $47,000. 3 personal loans, $38,000, online gambling accounts, $98, $183,000. More than I'd made in any single year as an engineer. More than Amanda could possibly earn as a real estate agent in 3 years, even with a hot market. I scrolled down. Diana had included a timeline. Month 1 to 6, after marriage spending normal. Joint checking account active. Amanda's income steady. Month 7, first casino charge. $200 at Potawatomi in Milwaukee. Scott present verified via hotel records. Month 8 to 12. Weekly poker games at friends' houses. Average losses $500 to $800 per session. Scott always present. Month 13. First online gambling account opened. Bet Rivers. Initial deposit $1,000. Scott's email used for registration. Month 14 to 18. 3 more online accounts opened. Total deposits climbing. Amanda's real estate income diverted entirely to gambling and minimum payments on growing credit card debt. Month 19 to 24, present spiral. Online gambling daily. Total losses now $98,000. Personal loans taken to cover credit card minimums. Scott controls all passwords. I stopped reading and stared at that last line. Scott controls all passwords. Not they share passwords. Not Amanda manages her accounts. Scott controlled them. He'd opened the accounts in her name, made the initial deposits, and kept the keys. This wasn't addiction. This was engineering. Cold, deliberate, systematic. I forced myself to keep reading. Diana's analysis continued. Pattern suggests grooming. Introduction to gambling was controlled and incremental. Friendly poker games with guaranteed early wins to build confidence. Transition to casino with Scott paying for celebration trips. Online accounts presented as easier and more private. Classic addiction grooming, lowering resistance, building dependency, isolating victim from support systems. The next section made my hands shake. Audio evidence obtained via phone records subpoena. Recording dated October 3 weeks before your property purchase. Phone conversation between Roger Taylor and Amanda Anderson. There was a media player embedded in the PDF. I clicked it with a finger that felt numb. Roger's voice came through my laptop speakers, rough and deliberate. Listen to me very carefully. Your father's about to close on a property worth nearly $400,000. That money represents our way out. Scott's worked too hard on this for you to screw it up now. Amanda's voice, barely audible. I can't ask him for that. You don't have to ask. He's got 6 empty cabins sitting there. We need one. That's all. Just one. Get us in the door, Amanda. Once we're on the property, we'll handle the rest. But he'll what? Find out you're a gambling addict. Find out you've stolen money from clients' escrow accounts to pay your debts. The audio went silent except for the sound of Amanda, crying not the fake tears Carol had produced, but deep, wrenching sobs. I didn't steal from clients. I borrowed. I was going to pay it back. Borrowed. Roger's laugh was ugly. That's what you'll tell the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services when they pull your license. That's what you'll tell your father. Please. Get us that property, Amanda, or everyone finds out what you really are. The recording ended. I sat in the silent kitchen, hands clenched on the edge of the counter, feeling something I hadn't felt since the night my wife died, complete helpless rage. They'd targeted my daughter, groomed her, isolated her, turned her into an addict, and then held it over her head like a blade. Every aggressive phone call, every demand, every threat, it hadn't been Amanda at all. It had been terror. I scrolled to Diana's final analysis. Assessment: Amanda Anderson is both victim and participant. Scott Anderson, real identity still unknown, deliberately cultivated gambling addiction through controlled exposure and access. Roger Taylor weaponized that addiction through blackmail. Amanda's recent aggressive behavior towards you represents panic, not malice. She's trapped between debt shame and threats. The claim about borrowing from escrow accounts is concerning. I'm still investigating whether actual theft occurred or if Roger fabricated that threat. Either way, Amanda believes she's guilty, which gives them leverage. Recommendation: your daughter needs help, not punishment. But helping her means dealing with the Taylors first. They won't stop as long as they think they can extract value from her fear. I'm available to discuss next steps. This situation is worse than a property dispute. It's organized criminal exploitation of a family member. Doctor, I closed the laptop and walked to the window. Fog still clung to the lake's surface, turning the world gray and formless. $183,000. 2 years of systematic destruction. A daughter transformed from the bright, ambitious woman I'd raised into someone who'd threatened to have me declared incompetent and forced back to Milwaukee. Not because she'd stopped loving me, because she was drowning. I pulled out my phone and called Diana. I got your report, I said when she answered. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. I know that wasn't easy to read. Can we prove it? The grooming, the blackmail, the control. Some of it. The audio recording is solid evidence of coercion. The account access patterns support grooming, but proving Scott deliberately created her addiction would be harder. We'd need testimony from the poker game participants' records from the casinos, maybe cooperation from the online gambling platforms. What if Amanda testified silence? Then that would require her to admit everything. To you, to authorities, potentially to professional licensing boards. Mr. Miller, are you saying? I'm saying this isn't about the property anymore. This is about getting my daughter away from these people before they destroy what's left of her life. That's good. That's the right instinct. But it's also dangerous. If you confront Amanda, Scott will know. If Scott knows, Roger knows. They might escalate. Let them. Mr. Miller. Diana, I've spent 39 years building things that last. Bridges, roads, infrastructure that serves people for generations. I'm not going to stand by while criminals dismantle my daughter. I watched an eagle land in a pine tree near the shore. What's the next step? We need leverage. I'm still tracking Scott's real identity. Once we have that, we can potentially bring federal charges for identity theft. I'm also looking into whether Roger's parole terms prohibit contact with his fraud victims. If we can prove he violated parole, he goes back to prison automatically. How long? Maybe a week, 2 at most. Make it 1. After I hung up, I stood at the window for a long time. The fog was burning off now, revealing the lake in shades of blue and gray. Somewhere out there, Amanda was waking up in an apartment I'd never been invited to, married to a man who didn't exist, trapped in a nightmare of debt and shame. And somewhere Roger Taylor was planning his next move. But he'd made one critical miscalculation. He'd threatened my daughter. And that changed everything. Diana called at 6 Saturday morning. I'd been awake for an hour watching fog roll across the lake. I found something, she said. Scott's having an affair. I set my coffee down. With who? Jennifer Hartman, 29, pharmaceutical sales rep, Milwaukee. 3 months of weekly hotel meetings. He tells Amanda he's meeting clients. Why does this matter? Jennifer just inherited $400,000 from her grandmother. The money cleared probate last month. The pattern clicked. She's next. She's next. Never married, no children, parents, deceased, one brother overseas. Limited support system. Scott met her at a pharmaceutical conference in August, positioned himself as a medical equipment consultant. Complete fabrication. Does she know he's married? He told her he's separated. Difficult divorce. Wife is unstable and controlling. The same playbook he used on Amanda. I stood and walked to the railing. Somewhere in Milwaukee, Amanda was waking up next to a man already planning to discard her. You said you found something. What's the rest? I got access to Scott's burner phone records. Burner phone. 3 phones. Regular iPhone Amanda knows. Second smartphone for Jennifer. Cheap prepaid burner for Roger. I'm sending screenshots now. My phone buzzed. 6 images loaded. October 15th, day after they came to my property. Roger Oldman's got cameras. Scott doesn't matter. Amanda's breaking. Few more days. October 18th, Roger Jennifer's inheritance cleared. $400K. You ready, Scott? Give me 2 weeks. Once we get the resort property, we're done with this one. I stopped breathing. We're done with this one. Not Amanda. Not my wife. This one, like inventory, a tool to discard. Next message, October 20th. Scott father-in-law's suspicious. Might need to accelerate. Roger, can you get Amanda to sign power of attorney? Scott, maybe. She's desperate. Tell Carol to make another crying call. October 21st, Scott. She tried calling him. He didn't answer. I told her he's rejecting her because he's selfish. She's angry now. Anger's good. We can use that. They weren't just exploiting Amanda. They were orchestrating her emotions, driving wedges between us, turning her anger toward me. Final screenshot. Yesterday, Roger, what's your read? Scott Oldman's tougher than expected. PI Cameras lawyer, might need to pivot. Roger, to what Scott? Jennifer's got $400,000 liquid, less hassle than real estate. Cut losses on Amanda and move. Roger, she could talk. Scott, she won't. Too much to lose. License, reputation, gambling debts. She's trapped. Roger, fine. But don't burn the bridge completely. Might be useful later. I closed the screenshots and stared at the lake until my vision cleared. 39 years building infrastructure taught me to see systems, how forces moved, where pressure accumulated, how to identify the critical failure point before collapse. This was a system. Roger was the architect. Scott was the operative. Amanda was the access point they'd compromised. But systems could be dismantled. "Diana," I said, voice steady, "send me everything. Every document, photo, text, message. Organized chronologically." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to Milwaukee." "Mr. Miller, I'm not asking permission. My daughter needs to see what she's married to. She needs to see it clearly all at once before Scott can spin it or Roger can threaten her." I opened my laptop. "How fast can you compile everything?" 2 hours. "But if you confront her and Scott's there, then Scott will see me coming. That's fine." Silence. "Then, you sound different." "I am different. Thursday I was defending property. Now I'm extracting my daughter from a criminal enterprise. Just be careful." "So am I. They just haven't figured that out yet." I'd say by 8 o'clock, Diana's compilation arrived. 143 pages of evidence. Financial forensics, timeline analysis, burner phone screenshots, surveillance photos of Scott and Jennifer. I printed everything and arranged it in a 3-ring binder tabbed by category. By 9 o'clock, I was in my truck heading south on Highway 13 toward Milwaukee. 4 hours to think about what I'd say when I knocked on Amanda's door. How to show her the truth without breaking her completely. How to pull her out without triggering final collapse. The October sky was sharp and blue, the kind of day that promised winter, but hadn't delivered it yet. I didn't know what would happen in Milwaukee, but I knew I couldn't wait another day. My daughter was trapped in a nightmare, and I was going to wake her up. I knocked on Amanda's apartment door at 8 Monday morning. The building was generic Milwaukee beige, siding numbered parking spots, the smell of someone's breakfast drifting through thin walls. I'd never been here before. Amanda had never invited me. The door opened on the 3rd knock. For a moment, I didn't recognize my own daughter. Amanda had always been slender, but this was something else. Her collarbones jutted sharp beneath a wrinkled t-shirt. Her face was gaunt eyes sunken deep with dark circles that spoke of weeks without real sleep. Her hair hung limp and unwashed. When she saw me, her hand trembled on the doorknob. "Dad." Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you?" "We need to talk." She glanced behind her into the apartment, then back at me. Fear flashed across her face, not surprise, fear. "Scott's not here. He's at a meeting." "I know. That's why I'm here now. Amanda, please. Let me in." She hesitated, then stepped back. I walked into chaos. Mail piled on every surface, most of it unopened. Collection notices scattered across the kitchen counter. Empty takeout containers stacked by the sink. A laptop sat open on the couch screen, showing a gambling website with a frozen loading bar. Amanda followed my gaze and quickly shut the laptop. I was just... "Sit down." She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped between her knees like a child waiting for punishment. I pulled a chair from the small dining table and sat across from her, setting the 3-ring binder on the coffee table between us. "I hired a private investigator," I began. "Well, over the past 10 days, she's uncovered things about Scott and his family that you need to see." Amanda's face went even paler. "Dad, I don't..." "Just listen. Please." I opened the binder to the first tab. Roger Taylor's criminal record printed on official Wisconsin Department of Corrections letterhead. Roger has 3 felony fraud convictions spanning 15 years. He's spent 6 years total in prison. He's currently on parole. I turned pages slowly, letting her see the mugshots, the case summaries, the victim statements. He's a career criminal, Amanda. This is what he does. Her hands started shaking harder. She wrapped her arms around herself. I flipped to the next section. Diana found 2 families in Ohio and 1 in Indiana. All of them targeted the same way. I showed her the photographs, middle-aged parents, their adult children, wedding photos. Then the legal documents. In each case, an adult child married someone connected to the Taylor family. Within 18 months, the parents had lost property money, or both. One elderly couple ended up in a state-run nursing home after their house was sold without their knowledge. Amanda made a small sound, halfway between a gasp and a sob. The pattern is clear. They find vulnerable targets. They insert Scott through romance. Fast relationship, quick marriage. Then, they extract assets through pressure manipulation and blackmail. I turned to the financial forensics section. The numbers were highlighted in yellow: credit cards, loans, gambling accounts. The total at the bottom circled in red. You owe $183,000. Amanda's face crumpled. She covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming instantly. I know, she choked out. God, Dad, I know. I'm so sorry. How much of this debt did Scott create? She shook her head, unable to speak. Amanda. I kept my voice steady. How much of this was him? All of it, she whispered. The poker games were his idea, the casino trips. He set up the online accounts. He said it would be fun, just a hobby. Said he had a system. She was sobbing now, words tumbling out between gasps. But I kept losing, and he kept saying one more time, one more bet, we'd break even. And then it was too much. And I couldn't stop, and I couldn't tell you because you'd be so disappointed. I'm not disappointed. Amanda, look at me. She raised her head, mascara-streaked face, devastated. You're not the villain here. You're the victim. Scott targeted you deliberately. Roger groomed you through Scott. They manufactured this debt to control you. But I let them. I made the bets. They engineered it. I flipped to the surveillance photos. Scott and Jennifer Hartman entering the Brookfield Marriott, kissing in the parking lot, her hand on his chest. Scott's been having an affair for 3 months. This woman just inherited $400,000. Amanda stared at the photos like they were written in a language she didn't understand. I showed her the burner phone texts, the ones about cutting losses, the one that called her this one, the messages coordinating her emotional manipulation. You were never his wife. You were phase 1 of a con. He married you to get access to me and my assets. When that didn't work fast enough, he started setting up his next target. I tapped the photo of Jennifer. She's next, and after her, there will be someone else. Amanda's breathing had gone shallow and rapid. She was staring at the texts, reading them over and over. Her lips moved silently, forming the words, done with this one. He was never going to stay. Roger's plan was to pressure me into giving them property or money, then disappear. Scott would divorce you, blame the gambling, take whatever remained, and move on to Jennifer with a clean slate. I thought he loved me. Her voice was so small. When we met, he was so kind, so interested in everything I said. He made me feel special, understood, like you'd finally found someone who saw you. She nodded, tears flowing freely. That's how they work. Scott knew you'd lost your mother young, that you felt disconnected from me after I focused so hard on work. He positioned himself as the emotional support you'd been missing. Amanda bent forward, elbows on knees, face in her hands. Her whole body shook with sobs. I showed her the final evidence. Recording transcripts. Roger threatening to expose her gambling. Carol's manipulated calls. The coordinated pressure campaign. They've been blackmailing you, using your shame and fear to force you to pressure me. Every aggressive phone call you made that wasn't you. That was them pulling strings. I called you terrible things, she whispered. I told you to sell your home. I threatened because you were terrified. You thought if you could give them what they wanted, it would stop. The debt would disappear. But it was never going to stop. They would have taken the resort, divorced you, and left you with nothing but the debt and the destroyed relationship with me. She was openly weeping now, the kind of crying that comes from a place deeper than words. I'm so stupid. You're not stupid. You were targeted by professionals. A sound cut through the apartment. Metal scraping metal. A key in the lock. Amanda's head snapped up, eyes wide with instant terror. We both froze, staring at the door. The lock clicked. The door handle turned. We heard him step inside. Scott's key just turned in the lock. Drop a comment. What do you think happens when he walks in and sees us with all that evidence? Quick note, this story includes fictionalized elements for narrative impact. If that's not your style, feel free to stop here. Ready to see what unfolds. Let's continue. The door swung wide and Scott walked in, whistling something cheerful and tuneless. He was carrying a Panera bag in one hand, keys jingling in the other, completely at ease in a space he believed he controlled. Then he saw me. The whistling stopped mid-note. His eyes went from my face to Amanda's tear-streaked devastation to the 3-ring binder open on the coffee table. For just a moment, his expression was completely blank, like someone had unplugged him and he was rebooting. Then the charm snapped back into place, that easy smile I'd seen at the wedding, at family dinners, in every conversation where he'd played the role of devoted husband. Sean. He set the bag down on the kitchen counter, moving with deliberate casualness. This is unexpected. Amanda didn't mention you were coming to visit. She didn't know. His eyes flicked to the binder again. From this angle, he couldn't see what was inside, but he was calculating. I could see it in the tension around his mouth, the way his hand stayed near his phone. Well? He spread his hands in a gesture meant to appear welcoming. It's good to see you. How's the resort getting settled in? Okay. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into the binder and pulled out the surveillance photos, 8x10 glossy prints that Diana had made specifically for this moment. I laid them on the coffee table one by one. Scott and Jennifer Hartman in the Marriott parking lot. Scott and Jennifer entering the hotel. Scott and Jennifer kissing against her car. Scott's hand on Jennifer's lower back as they walked through the lobby. The smile on Scott's face didn't just fade, it evaporated. What replaced it was something cold and flat, like a reptile assessing prey. What the hell is this? That's Jennifer Hartman, I said calmly. 29 years old, pharmaceutical sales rep. You've been seeing her for 3 months. Every Thursday evening when you tell Amanda you have client meetings. Amanda made a small broken sound. Scott's eyes snapped to her. Babe, this is taken completely out of context. This is a colleague we were discussing. I laid down another photo, Scott and Jennifer, in an embrace that left no room for professional interpretation. She just inherited $400,000. I continued. Her grandmother died 6 weeks ago. The will cleared probate last month. You met her at a medical equipment conference in August, except you're not in medical equipment, are you, Scott? You're not in any legitimate business at all. Scott's jaw clenched. The mask was cracking now, pieces falling away, to reveal something uglier underneath. You don't know what you're talking about, old man. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I pulled out the burner phone transcripts. I know about Roger's 3 fraud convictions. I know about the families in Ohio and Indiana. I know about the long con you've been running on my daughter for 2 years. Scott stared at the transcripts, at the texts calling Amanda this one, at the messages about cutting losses and moving on to Jennifer. Something shifted in his posture. The pretense of civility dropped completely. When he looked at me again, his eyes were empty of everything except cold calculation. You stupid old man, he said quietly. You had one job: give us access to that property, and everyone walks away happy. But you had to be difficult. Had to hire investigators and lawyers and play detective. He took a step toward me. You think you've won something here? You think showing Amanda a few pictures changes anything? Scott. Amanda's voice was barely audible. Shut up. He didn't even look at her. You had your chance to handle this quietly. We gave you weeks. I stood slowly positioning myself between Scott and Amanda. This conversation is over. Amanda's leaving with me. Scott laughed a sound with no humor in it. Is that what you think? He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. A moment later, a voice came through the speaker. Roger's voice. What's wrong? The father-in-law's here, at the apartment. He's got photos, transcripts, the whole deal. He's trying to take Amanda. A pause. Then Roger's voice came back hard and decisive. But get him out of there. Right now. If he doesn't leave, call it in, say he's trespassing, making threats, whatever. Get him arrested if you have to. Understood. Scott ended the call and looked at me with something approaching satisfaction. You're trespassing in my home. You need to leave. Now. This isn't your home. I kept my voice level. This is a rented apartment in Amanda's name. I'm here at my daughter's invitation. I looked past Scott to where Amanda sat frozen on the couch. Amanda, tell him you want to leave. Amanda's eyes were enormous, darting between Scott and me like a trapped animal looking for an exit. Scott moved fast. He crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed Amanda's arm, yanking her to her feet. You're not going anywhere. You're my wife. This is our home. And your father. Don't touch her. Something in my voice stopped him. I'd never been a violent man. 39 years, designing infrastructure, solving problems with mathematics, and planning avoiding confrontation whenever possible. But standing there watching him grip my daughter's arm hard enough to leave marks, something ancient and protective rose up in me. Let her go. Scott's grip tightened. Amanda whimpered. I pulled out my phone and held it up. 911 is 3 numbers. Touch her again, and I press dial. You want to explain to the police why you're assaulting your wife in front of a witness, with a phone full of burner texts coordinating fraud, while you're violating your identity theft probation by using a dead man's social security number. Scott froze. Yeah, I said quietly. I know about Scott Emerson. I know about the 2015 arrest. I know everything. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then slowly, incrementally, Scott's hand loosened on Amanda's arm. Amanda jerked away from him and grabbed her purse from the couch. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. You're making a mistake, Scott said, but he was talking to Amanda now, not me. His voice had changed again, softer, pleading. Baby, listen to me. Your father's feeding you lies. Everything I've done has been for us, for our future together. Don't let him poison. Stop. Amanda's voice was barely audible, but she was moving toward me. Just stop. Amanda. I said stop. She was crying now, backing toward the door. I can't do this anymore. I can't. I took her arm gently and guided her toward the entrance. Scott stood in the middle of the living room, phone in his hand, face contorted between rage and calculation. As we reached the door, he called out, "You'll have to come back. You've got nowhere else to go. No money, no credit, no job. You think Daddy's going to support you while you're drowning in debt? You'll be crawling back here in a week." I opened the door. Amanda stumbled through it. I followed, pulling it shut behind us. We made it to my truck without speaking. I unlocked the doors. Amanda climbed in the passenger side, clutching her purse like a life preserver. I started the engine. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I saw Scott in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway of the building, phone pressed to his ear. Calling Roger. Regrouping. But Amanda was with me. That was what mattered. We drove in silence for 30 minutes. Highway 43 south, then west on 794, the Milwaukee skyline receding behind us. Amanda stared out the window, face blank with shock. Finally, somewhere near Waukesha, she spoke. It started with just one bet. Her voice was hoarse from crying. That's what he told me. Just one bet. $20 on a poker hand. I kept my eyes on the road but reached over and took her hand. She gripped it hard. I need to tell you everything, she whispered. All of it. From the beginning. Okay, I said quietly. I'm listening. The highway stretched empty through central Wisconsin October fields, waiting for winter. Amanda sat with her purse clutched in her lap, staring at nothing. It started with just one bet, she said, voice barely above a whisper. $20 at a poker game. Scott's colleagues. I didn't know any of them. He gave me the money and said it would be fun. I kept my eyes on the road, every muscle tense with the effort of listening. I won that first hand. Everyone congratulated me, and it felt good, like I belonged. Scott was so proud. That's my girl, natural card player. So I played another hand, and another. Highway 43 became 57, cutting northwest toward Lake Superior. Casino trips started a month later. Scott booked a hotel, got dinner reservations, then suggested we walk through Potawatomi just to look. But once we were there, he knew exactly where to go, which machines had the best odds. He gave me $200. I won $600. It felt like magic. That's how addiction starts. They let you win just enough. The online accounts came next. Scott set them up but said they were in my name because his credit wasn't good enough. I believed everything. She turned to look at me. Dad. I signed things I didn't read. I forged bank statements to cover losses. I lied to my manager about commission checks. I became someone I don't recognize. Amanda, I'm not finished. Her voice hardened. When Scott said Roger and Carol needed a place, I knew it was wrong. But Roger called me separately. Told me you'd bought a resort with 6 empty cabins. Said it was perfect timing. That you were selfish, keeping all that space when family needed help. My hands tightened on the wheel. He said if I could get them into one cabin, they'd help pay my debts. Investment opportunities. Carol's brother had money. All lies. But I was drowning, and they offered a rope. The highway curved through pine forest. When you said no, Roger got angry. Said I was useless. That I'd married into their family and had to earn my place. She stopped, pressing both hands to her mouth. Tell me. He told me to file for conservatorship. The word hit like a physical blow. My vision narrowed. He said you were old alone making questionable decisions, that buying a resort by yourself showed impaired judgment. He had a lawyer ready. All I had to do was sign an affidavit saying you were mentally incompetent. Her voice broke. And I considered it. For 3 days I had the papers in my purse. I kept thinking maybe it would be better for everyone. You'd be safe in Milwaukee where we could watch over you, and the resort would be managed responsibly, and my debt would disappear. I pulled onto the shoulder so abruptly the tires kicked up. Gravel. I put it in park hands, still gripping the wheel, breathing hard. I didn't do it, Amanda said quickly. Every time I looked at those papers, I saw you signing away 39 years of savings, and I couldn't. She was sobbing. What kind of person even thinks about that? What kind of daughter? The kind who was being manipulated by criminals. The kind who was terrified and desperate and surrounded by people who knew exactly which buttons to push. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. But it's context. I turned to look at her. Amanda Scott did his research. He knew about your mother dying. He knew I'd thrown myself into work afterward. He knew there was distance between us, and he exploited it. Amanda covered her face. And that distance was my fault. She looked up sharply. What? When your mother died, I didn't know how to handle it. How to be a single parent to a teenage girl while managing my own grief. So I worked, 60, 70-hour weeks. I told myself I was building financial security. But what you needed was a father who was present, who showed up for more than parent-teacher conferences and graduation. Dad, you did the best you could. I did what was easiest for me. Work was predictable. I could solve problems with math, but being emotionally available. I shook my head. I gave you money for college, your first car, the condo down payment. I thought that was love, but you needed more than my checkbook. Tears streamed down both our faces. When Scott made you feel seen, you fell for him, because I'd left you vulnerable to exactly that attention. So if you're asking what kind of daughter considers betraying her father, I'm asking what kind of father creates conditions where his daughter feels so alone she becomes vulnerable to predators. We're both asking the wrong questions, Amanda whispered. Yeah. I reached over and took her hand. Yeah, we are. We sat in the truck on the side of Highway 57, holding hands across the console, two broken people, trying to figure out how to be a family again. After a long time, Amanda said, I don't know how to fix this. Neither do I, but we'll figure it out, one day at a time. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I pulled back onto the highway. The sun was dropping toward the horizon, turning the sky orange and pink. We drove in silence, a different silence than before, less hollow, more full of understanding. By the time we crossed into Bayfield County, dusk had settled. Lake Superior appeared ahead, vast and gray. Is that it? Amanda asked, pointing to where the lodge's roofline was visible through trees. That's it. It's beautiful. Wait until you see it in daylight. There's a dock where loons nest, an eagle that fishes every morning. Amanda made a sound between a laugh and a sob. 6 cabins. Yeah. I parked in front of the main lodge and killed the engine. About that. I'm so sorry. I know. I looked at her across the cab. We're going to be okay, Amanda. It's going to take time. Maybe a lot of time, but we're going to be okay. She nodded, not quite believing it yet, but wanting to. We got out. The evening air was cold and clean, smelling of pine and lake water. I led Amanda up the porch steps and unlocked the door to the lodge that had nearly cost us everything and somehow impossibly brought us back together. We were halfway up the porch steps when headlights swept across the driveway, flooding everything in harsh white light. I turned hand still on Amanda's arm and watched the black SUV roll to a stop 20 feet away. The same rental, Illinois plates. They'd followed us. "Dad." Amanda's voice went high with fear. "Stay behind me." The temperature had dropped with sunset. My breath fogged in the cold air. The lake was invisible in the darkness beyond the trees, but I could hear it, that low, constant rhythm of water against shore. 2 doors opened simultaneously. Roger emerged from the driver's side. Scott from the passenger. Both stood for a moment, letting their eyes adjust to the darkness, then started walking toward us with deliberate slowness. Carol stayed in the SUV, a pale shape behind the windshield, watching. "You made this harder than it needed to be," Roger called out. His voice was conversational, almost friendly, but there was steel underneath. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, hands in his jacket pockets. Running away in the middle of a discussion, taking someone else's wife without permission. "She's my daughter. She's Scott's wife." Roger tilted his head. "Legally bound. You're interfering in a marriage? That's not a good look, Sean." Scott moved to Roger's left, positioning himself to cut off any retreat toward my truck. His eyes were locked on Amanda, and what I saw there made my skin crawl. Not love, not even anger, just cold assessment, like he was calculating the effort required to reclaim lost property. "Amanda," Scott said, his voice unnaturally calm. "Come here. We're going home." Amanda pressed closer to my back. I felt her trembling. "She's not going anywhere with you." "That's not your decision." Scott took a step forward. "Amanda, this is ridiculous. Your father's filled your head with lies and conspiracy theories. I love you. We're going to work through this together, but you need to come with me now." The manipulation was so naked, it was almost insulting. The same voice he'd probably used 100 times, reasonable, concerned, loving, but standing in the darkness with his mask already cracked, it just sounded hollow. "I'm staying with my dad." Scott's jaw tightened. "Don't make this difficult." "The only thing difficult here," I said evenly, "is that you're trespassing on my property. You need to leave. Now." Roger laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Your property. Right. See, that's the problem, Sean. You've got this whole place to yourself. 6 cabins sitting empty while family needs help. That's not how things work. Actually, that's exactly how private property works." "Is it?" Roger's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Because from where I'm standing, you're an elderly man living alone in an isolated location. No neighbors for a quarter mile. No cell service unless you're up on the ridge. Anything could happen out here, and nobody would know for hours." The threat was explicit now. Amanda made a small sound of fear. I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the sheriff." "Don't do that," Roger's voice went flat. "Get off my property or I call." Scott moved fast. He lunged up the porch steps, one hand reaching for the phone. I tried to pull back, but he was younger, faster. His fingers closed around my wrist and twisted hard. Pain shot up my arm. The phone slipped from my grip and clattered down the steps. "Scott!" Amanda screamed. I shoved him backward with my free hand. He stumbled but didn't fall, then came at me again. This time I was ready. I blocked his arm and pushed him hard in the chest. He went down on one knee on the porch boards. "You stupid old man." He was on his feet, instantly, breathing hard. "You think you can just take her, after everything I've invested, 2 years of my life dealing with her pathetic gambling problems and daddy issues?" "Scott, stop." Roger's voice had an edge of warning, but Scott wasn't listening anymore. The careful facade had shattered completely. He advanced on me, hands clenched into fists. You know how exhausting it is playing the devoted husband to someone who cries every night about mommy being dead, pretending to care about her boring real estate clients and her stupid anxiety about whether daddy's proud of her. Amanda made a broken sound behind me. I earned that resort, Scott was shouting now, spit flying. I sat through 2 years of her neurotic bullshit. I set up every bet, guided every loss, built the perfect trap, and you were supposed to just hand over the property like a good little mark. Scott, shut up. Roger started toward the porch. No. You know what she said in the car? After he showed her those photos. Scott pointed at Amanda. She said she still loved me. Can you believe that after everything? She said maybe we could work it out if I went to counseling. He laughed, wild and unhinged. Counseling? For what? For being good at my job. I could see it happening. Scott's careful control dissolving into rage, words pouring out that should never be spoken aloud. Roger saw it too. He was moving toward Scott, trying to get between us, trying to stop what was coming. But Scott was gone, lost in fury and the collapse of his perfect plan. This was supposed to be easy. His voice cracked. Get the simpering daughter to pressure daddy. Daddy caves, or we push harder with the conservatorship play. Either way, we get the property. 6 cabins we could operate as rentals, clear 30 grand a month easy. Then divorce the dead weight and move on to Jennifer, who actually has liquid assets. The words hung in the cold air like smoke. Roger grabbed Scott's arm. Shut your mouth. Right now. But Scott jerked away, still fixated on me. You ruined everything. We had it perfect. Amanda was ready to sign the conservatorship papers 1 more week, and you'd have been declared incompetent, and we'd have had legal control of the whole property. Scott. Roger's voice was desperate now. And Jennifer was ready too. I was this close to getting her to invest in a development property. $400,000 that would have been ours, free and clear. He was almost shouting now. But you had to hire investigators and lawyers and play detective. Roger yanked Scott backward, hard enough to spin him around. I said, shut up. For a moment they stood there, Roger gripping Scott's jacket, both of them breathing hard. In the sudden silence, I could hear Amanda crying softly behind me. Then from somewhere down the driveway, a different sound cut through the night. Sirens. Scott, Roger, and Carol are in custody. Amanda collapsed. Comment your thoughts. Is this truly over or is more coming? Reminder, this blends real themes with fictionalized scenarios. If it doesn't resonate, this is a good stopping point. Want to see what happens next? Stay with me. Scott was still shouting, the words pouring out in a torrent he couldn't stop. You think I could actually love someone like her? He jabbed a finger toward Amanda. 2 years of listening to her whine about her dead mother and her emotionally distant father. 2 years of pretending to care about open houses and mortgage rates. He laughed wildly. Just this is business. It's always been business. Scott stopped talking. Roger grabbed his arm again, but Scott shook him off. No, he wants to know what we were planning. I'll tell him. Scott turned back to me, eyes wild. 6 cabins, prime lake, superior location. We rent them out peak season at $300 a night minimum. That's $54,000 in July and August alone. Add spring and fall weekends, we're clearing $70,000–$80,000 a year in pure profit. And what about me? I asked quietly. High in this plan of yours. You, Scott's laugh was ugly. Once we had conservatorship, you'd be in some nice managed care facility in Milwaukee. Memory care, they call it. Doesn't matter if you actually have dementia once you're declared incompetent. It's hard to fight your way out. We'd have been managing your assets for your own good, while you drooled in front of a TV somewhere. Amanda made a sound like something breaking. And her, I gestured to my daughter. What happened to Amanda in this plan? Amanda was phase 1. Access point to you and your money. Scott's voice was flat, now emotionless. Once we had the property locked down and Jennifer's $400,000 secured, I'd file for divorce. Blame it on her gambling addiction, which is documented, by the way. She'd get nothing in the settlement because she's the one with the debt and the problem. Clean break, move on. You're insane, Amanda whispered. I'm practical. Scott's smile was cold. Your father was a mark. A lonely widower with assets and a vulnerable daughter. Roger found you through your real estate license database, new agent, single mother, deceased. Perfect profile. I did the rest. From behind me, a woman's voice cut through the darkness. Keep talking. This is excellent. We all turned. Diana Rodriguez stood at the edge of the driveway, phone held up and pointed directly at Scott. The screen glowed with a recording icon. Every word, she said calmly. Conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted conservatorship, fraud, identity theft, Scott Emerson, by the way. That's who you really are. And now I've got conspiracy to deprive someone of their liberty. You want to keep going? Give me aggravated assault to add to the list. Scott's face went white. The sirens were louder now. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees. You called them, Roger said, looking at me with something between rage and disbelief. I held up my wrist, showing the smartwatch I'd been wearing since Milwaukee. SOS button. Activated it the moment your SUV pulled in. Diana got a text alert. Sheriff's Department got an automated call with GPS coordinates. 2 Bayfield County Sheriff's vehicles came down the drive, lights blazing. 4 deputies emerged, hands on their weapons. Bayfield County Sheriff's Department, nobody move. Everything happened fast after that. Scott looked at the deputies, at Diana still recording, at me and Amanda on the porch. Then he bolted straight into the woods, crashing through underbrush in the darkness. "Runner in the woods!" one deputy shouted. 2 of them took off after him with flashlights. Roger put his hands up slowly. This is a misunderstanding. We were just having a family discussion. Sir, step away from the vehicle and put your hands on the hood. Carol finally got out of the SUV, already crying. We didn't do anything, we were just trying to help. Ma'am, hands where I can see them. Diana walked over to the senior deputy, a woman in her 50s with sergeant stripes. Diana Rodriguez, licensed investigator. I've been working this case for 10 days. I have recordings, financial records, and I just captured a full confession on video. The sergeant nodded. We'll need all of it. From the woods came shouts, then the sound of someone crashing through branches. The 2 deputies emerged, dragging Scott between them. His jacket was torn, face scratched from branches, and he was screaming about police brutality and illegal arrest. Scott Emerson, the sergeant said, approaching him. Also known as Scott Anderson. You're under arrest for criminal trespass assault. She gestured at me. And we'll be adding quite a bit more once we review that recording. You have the right to remain silent. This is illegal. You can't. Sir, I strongly suggest you exercise that right to remain silent. They cuffed him. Then Roger. Then Carol, who was still sobbing about how they were good people, they'd never hurt anyone. This was all a terrible mistake. All 3 were loaded into the vehicles. The sergeant came over to me and Amanda on the porch. Mr. Miller, are you and your daughter injured? He grabbed my phone, twisted my wrist. But I'm okay. We'll need statements from both of you. and I'm going to recommend you get checked out at the hospital. I'm fine. I just want to get my daughter inside. The sergeant looked at Amanda, who was shaking silently, tears streaming down her face. Ma'am, are you hurt? Amanda shook her head mutely. Okay, I'll send someone by tomorrow to take full statements. Diana, you'll need to come to the station tonight with that recording and your evidence files. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The vehicles pulled away, red lights disappearing down the drive. Diana walked over to us. You okay? She asked me quietly. We will be. She looked at Amanda. Mrs. Anderson, or I guess Mrs. Miller, now what your husband said tonight, all of it, it's on record. That combined with everything else I've gathered, they're going away for a long time. Amanda nodded, still unable to speak. Diana squeezed my shoulder. Get her inside. Warm, safe, quiet. I'll handle the rest tonight and check in tomorrow. She walked to her car and drove away. The lodge grounds were suddenly completely silent. Just the sound of wind in the pines and the distant rhythm of the lake. I turned to Amanda. Come on, let's go inside. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much, been through too much. Dad, I don't know what to do now. I don't know who I am anymore. I know. I put my arm around her shoulders. But you're safe. That's what matters right now. You're safe, and you're home. We walked into the main lodge together. I locked the door behind us, something I'd never done before. Turned on lights. The space looked exactly as I'd left it that morning, organized, peaceful, waiting. Amanda stood in the middle of the great room, still holding her purse, looking lost. Sit down, I said gently. I'll make tea. She sat on the couch like a stranger in an unfamiliar place. Free, finally. But having no idea what freedom was supposed to feel like anymore. The first week after the arrests was quiet, in a way that felt fragile, like we were both walking on ice that hadn't quite frozen solid yet. Amanda stayed in cabin 3, the farthest from the main lodge. Not because I didn't want her close, but because we both needed boundaries, space to breathe without constantly navigating the wreckage between us. I established rules the second morning over coffee on the porch. You're safe here, I told her. But safe doesn't mean free. You can stay as long as you need, but there are conditions. She nodded, holding her mug with both hands, like it was the only solid thing in her world. Okay. You attend therapy. I found someone in Ashland who specializes in addiction and trauma. 3 sessions a week, non-negotiable. Okay. No internet access without supervision. Your phone stays with me, except for essential calls. I'll give it back when you're ready. But right now, you need distance from everything and everyone connected to Scott. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. And you help around the property. Cooking, cleaning, maintenance. Not because I need the help, but because you need structure. Purpose. I understand. We sat in silence for a moment, watching morning fog lift off the lake. Dad. Her voice was small. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, I said quietly. But Amanda, I'm not rescuing you. I'm giving you a safe place to rescue yourself. There's a difference. On day 3, FBI agent Marcus Webb arrived. Mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of eyes that had seen enough human ugliness to never be surprised, but still cared enough to be angry about it. We sat at the dining table in the main lodge, me, Amanda, Kate Reynolds, and Agent Webb. He laid out folders with methodical precision. The Taylor operation has been active for at least 10 years across 4 states, he began. Roger Taylor, Carol, Taylor, Scott, Emerson, real name Scott Marcus Novak, and at least 2 cousins we're still identifying. They've targeted 19 families that we know of. Total estimated theft, $1.2 million. Amanda closed her eyes. Most victims were too ashamed or financially destroyed to press charges. But with your testimony, Ms. Miller, and the evidence Diana Rodriguez compiled, we can bring RICO charges. Racketeering influenced and corrupt organizations. That carries federal time. How much time? I asked. Rogers looking at 12 to 15 years. Carroll, 8 to 10. Scott. Webb's mouth tightened. Scott's got prior identity theft charges, the assault on you conspiracy charges. He's looking at 20 years minimum. Amanda's hands trembled around her coffee mug. We need your testimony. Webb continued, looking at her directly. Full cooperation. Every detail about how they groomed you, manipulated you, the financial coercion, the blackmail. In exchange, we're offering immunity from prosecution for any actions you took under duress. What about the gambling debts? Amanda asked quietly. The forged documents. The gambling is civil, not criminal. The documents. Webb glanced at Kate. Given the coercion and blackmail, we're not pursuing charges, but the debt is still yours. Kate leaned forward. I'm filing divorce papers today. Wisconsin is a no-fault state, but given Scott's fraud and your documented financial abuse, we can argue for a clean separation of assets. You won't be responsible for his debts, and he gets none of yours, which means none of your father's. What about her real estate license? I asked. Kate's expression was grim. The Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services will review her case. The forged bank statements, the escrow account concerns even with the coercion context. It's a serious violation. She'll likely face suspension or revocation. Amanda had gone pale. So I lose everything. You lose the license, Kate corrected. Maybe. We can argue mitigating circumstances. But yes, there will be consequences. After they left, Amanda sat on the couch in cabin 3, staring at nothing. I sat in the chair across from her. I have $183,000 in debt, she said flatly. No income, no career, no husband, nothing. You have yourself, and you have me. Dad, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. And I'm not offering. I kept my voice gentle but firm. Amanda, if I pay your debt, I'm telling you that your choices don't have consequences, that someone will always bail you out. That's not love. That's enabling. She looked at me with eyes that were too old for 29. So what do? You file for bankruptcy. You rebuild credit slowly. You find work, maybe not real estate, but something. You attend GA meetings and therapy. You face what you did and learn to live with it. I leaned forward. You do the hard work of becoming someone you can respect again. Tears slid down her face. I don't know if I can. You can. But you have to choose it. Every day. The next morning, Kate helped Amanda file bankruptcy paperwork. Chapter 7, Full Liquidation. The few assets, she had a 10-year-old car, some furniture would be sold. Most of the debt would be discharged. Her credit would be destroyed for years. That evening, I found her on the dock, wrapped in one of my old fleeces, watching the sun set over Lake Superior. Yeah, it's really over, she said when I sat beside her. My marriage, my career, my life as I knew it. The life you knew was built on a foundation of lies and manipulation. It had to end. But what comes next? I looked out at the water, at the endless horizon where lake met sky. I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Together. She leaned against my shoulder. I put my arm around her. The legal machinery was grinding forward. Arrests, charges, court dates, testimony. The Taylors and Scott would face justice eventually, but the real price, the cost in shame loss and broken trust, that bill was just starting to come due. And unlike the bankruptcy court, there was no discharge for that kind of debt. You just learned to carry it. The bankruptcy filing was just paperwork. The real losses came after. 2 weeks later, the letter arrived from the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services. Despite Kate's arguments about coercion and manipulation, the decision was final license revoked. Amanda Miller Anderson was no longer a real estate agent. She read the letter once, folded it carefully, and put it in a drawer. "I deserve it," she said quietly. "I forged documents, used client information inappropriately. It doesn't matter why." Her credit score dropped to 487. Every credit card was canceled. Collection agencies called daily until I helped her change her number. The car, a Honda Accord she'd been making payments on, was repossessed on a Tuesday morning. She watched from the cabin window as the tow truck drove away with it. Friends stopped calling. Women from her real estate office couples she and Scott had socialized with. The phone stayed silent except for my calls and Kate's check-ins. "They think I knew," Amanda said one night. "They think I was part of it." "Does it matter what they think?" She considered that. "No, I guess not." On day 3 after losing her license, Linda Harris called. I hear your daughter's looking for work," Linda said. "Tell her to come by the diner tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. We need a waitress." Amanda showed up at Linda's Sunrise Diner at 5:45. Came home at 2 in the afternoon smelling like coffee and bacon grease feet, aching hands raw from dish soap. "How was it?" "Humbling." She sank onto the couch. "I made $18 in tips. Some guy yelled at me because his eggs weren't cooked right. Another customer left a quarter and told me to try harder next time." She looked at her hands. "But I earned that $18. Nobody handed it to me. It's mine." That's when I knew she was going to make it. Weeks turned into months. Amanda developed a routine wake at 5 work, until 2 therapy 3 days a week. GA meetings Tuesdays and Thursdays, help with dinner, read, sleep. Repeat. She saved every penny she could, kept a jar in the cabin where she deposited tips. By month 1, she had $212. By month 2, $436. "What are you saving for?" I asked. "I don't know yet, but when I figure it out, I want to have something to start with." Month 3 brought the first signs of spring. Ice breaking up on the lake. Eagles returning. Amanda's face had color again. Not the gaunt look from Milwaukee, but healthy color from cold airwalks and full nights of sleep. Linda promoted her to lead server, $12 an hour instead of minimum wage. Amanda came home and cried. "Someone trusts me with responsibility again," she said. "I didn't think that would happen." Month 6 arrived with the sentencing hearing. We drove to federal court in Milwaukee together. Kate met us there. The courthouse was imposing marble and security checkpoints and the weight of justice. Roger Taylor was sentenced first. 12 years in federal prison. He showed no emotion, just stared straight ahead, like this was a minor setback. Carol received 6 years. She cried, apologized to the victims, claimed she'd been manipulated by Roger. The judge wasn't impressed. Then Scott. Real name Scott Marcus Novak. 9 years federal prison. Identity theft, fraud, assault, conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The judge was harsh. "You are a predator who targeted vulnerable people for profit. You destroyed families, bankrupted elderly couples, and showed no remorse until caught. This court finds your conduct reprehensible." Scott looked back at the gallery once. His eyes found Amanda. What I saw wasn't love or regret, just cold assessment calculating whether she'd cost him years of his sentence. Amanda looked away first. Outside, she stood in the parking lot for a long time, just breathing. It's really over. The criminal case is. Everything else is still being written. A week later, Kate delivered the final divorce decree. The marriage of Amanda Miller and Scott Marcus Novak was dissolved. No shared assets, no alimony, no contact. Amanda signed without reading. That night, she sat at the desk in cabin 3 with stationery I'd bought her. She wrote letters, one to each of the 19 families the Taylors had defrauded. Dear Mrs. Patterson, my name is Amanda Miller. I was married to Scott Novak, who helped destroy your family's finances. I am writing to say I am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know my apology means nothing compared to what you lost. But I need you to know that I see what happened. I see the damage, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be better than the person I was. She wrote 19 letters, 19 apologies for harm she'd been both victim and instrument of. 18 went unanswered. But in mid-March, a letter came back. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, 73, from Indianapolis. The woman whose house had been sold while she was in managed care. Dear Amanda, thank you for your letter. I won't pretend what happened didn't hurt. I lost my home of 40 years. But I've read about your testimony about how you were targeted. I know something about being vulnerable to predators. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying anger is exhausting, and I'm too old to lug that weight around. I hope you find peace. Eleanor Amanda held that letter for a long time, tears streaming. She forgives me, she whispered. Why would she forgive me? Because she understands something you're still learning. That being a victim and being complicit aren't mutually exclusive. And that grace, real grace, is choosing to extend mercy anyway. April came to northern Wisconsin like a promise being kept. Ice retreated from the shoreline. The loons returned, calling across the water. Eagles fished in the mornings. The forest filled with birdsong. Amanda had been working at the diner for 4 months. She had $873 saved. Her hands were calloused, but capable. Her face was lean, but strong. One morning before her shift, I found her on the dock watching the sunrise. The lake was still reflecting pink and gold clouds. A pair of loons floated nearby, their haunting call echoing across the water. Spring's coming, she said without turning. It is. Sakurso, I didn't think I'd make it to spring. Back in November in that apartment with Scott drowning in debt and lies. I didn't think I'd survive to see another spring. But you did. She nodded slowly. Yeah, I did. We stood there together as the sun cleared the horizon, turning the lake into liquid gold. Somewhere in the pines, an eagle called. The air smelled clean and new, full of possibility. April was coming, and with it the slow, patient work of rebuilding a life from ashes. I watched Amanda change day by day, and the transformation was so gradual, it would have been easy to miss if I hadn't been paying attention. She started picking up extra shifts at the diner without being asked. When Linda offered her Saturdays off, she said no, she'd rather work. The money mattered, but so did the routine, the structure, the proof that she could show up and be relied on. Her therapy appointments in Ashland became non-negotiable. 3 times a week, she drove my truck. The 30 minutes south, sat in Dr. Carson's office for an hour and came back quieter but steadier. She never told me what they discussed, and I never asked. The GA meetings were harder. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. in the basement of St. Francis Church in Bayfield. The first few times she came back with red eyes and wouldn't talk, but by the 3rd week she started mentioning people by first names only. Michael talked about relapsing after 2 years sober, she'd say. Or Sarah's daughter won't talk to her anymore. She was building a life. Small, careful, deliberately constructed. Like someone who'd learned that foundations matter more than facades. April arrived in full force. The ice on Lake Superior broke apart with sounds like distant thunder, great sheets of white fracturing and drifting. The loons returned. I heard them one morning before dawn, that trembling call that sounds like loneliness but is actually conversation. Amanda heard them too. I found her on the dock at sunrise, wrapped in one of my old fleeces, watching a pair of them fish near the shore. "They mate for life," she said when I sat beside her. "Loons. They come back to the same nesting sites every year." I didn't know that. I've been reading about them, trying to understand this place. She pulled the fleece tighter. "Ha, you picked a good spot to retire, Dad. It's peaceful here." That's what I was hoping for. 39 years of highway noise and construction sites. I wanted somewhere I could hear myself think. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the loons dive and surface, dive and surface. "Dad," her voice was tentative, "do you forgive me for what I almost did with the conservatorship for all of it?" I'd been waiting for this question, knew it would come eventually. "I forgive you," I said carefully. I forgave you the moment you chose to leave with me instead of staying with Scott. But Amanda, forgiveness and trust are different things." She looked at me, eyes filling with tears. I forgive you because I understand you were manipulated and terrified. I forgive you because you're my daughter, and I love you." I turned to face her fully. But trust is something you earn back slowly, through consistent actions over time, through proving that the person you are now is stable, reliable, honest. Chion, how long will that take? I don't know. As long as it takes. Maybe a year, maybe 5. But I'll be here while you do the work. She wiped her eyes. That's fair. That's more than fair. And Amanda, I need to earn your trust back too. She looked surprised. What do you mean? I failed you after your mother died. I threw myself into work because it was easier than facing grief and learning how to be a single parent to a teenage girl. I gave you money instead of presents. I let distance grow between us and told myself it was normal that teenagers don't want their parents around anyway. I swallowed hard. But the truth is, I abandoned you emotionally when you needed me most. And that abandonment made you vulnerable to someone like Scott. Dad, that's not... It is. Not entirely, but partially. I created a hole in your life, and Scott filled it. So if we're going to rebuild our relationship, we both need to do better. Be more honest. More present. Amanda was crying now, but nodding. Okay, yes. How do we do that? I don't know, but I think we should find out together. The next week, we started family therapy. Dr. Carson recommended a colleague in Duluth who specialized in family systems, a woman named Margaret, who looked like somebody's grandmother but asked questions like a prosecutor. The first session was brutal. She made us talk about Amanda's mother, about the year after she died, about all the conversations we'd never had, and all the grief we'd swallowed instead of sharing. I admitted I'd been afraid of Amanda's emotions, that when she cried, I didn't know how to help, so I'd given her space instead, which she'd interpreted as rejection. Amanda admitted she'd been angry at me for years, angry that I kept working long hours even after Mom died, angry that I missed her college graduation because of a project deadline, angry that I seemed fine when she was falling apart. I thought you didn't care, she said, voice breaking. I thought losing Mom didn't affect you the same way. I cared so much I couldn't function, I told her. So I buried it in blueprints and calculations because that was the only way I knew how to survive. We left that first session exhausted and raw. But we went back the next week, and the week after that. By late April, something had shifted. We started having dinner together most nights, not in silence or with forced conversation, but actually talking. About her day at the diner, about a book I was reading about, whether the eagle we'd seen that morning was the same one from last year. Small things. Normal things. The kind of things families do when they're not broken. Amanda's savings jar was filling steadily. By early May, she had $4,000. One Saturday after her shift, she asked to borrow my truck. "There's a studio apartment in Ashland," she said, "above the bookstore on Main Street. It's small, but it's clean, and the rent is reasonable. I want to look at it." My first instinct was to say no, to keep her close where I could make sure she was safe. But that was the old pattern control disguised as protection. "Take the truck," I said. "Let me know what you think of the place." She came back 3 hours later, eyes bright. "It's perfect, or it will be perfect once I can afford it. $600 a month plus utilities. I need first month, last month, and security deposit. $3,600. I'm almost there. You could stay here as long as you need." "I know. But Dad, I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own. Not with Scott holding me up or holding me down. Not with you rescuing me, just me making it work." I understood that. Maybe better than she knew. "Then keep saving. And when you're ready, we'll help you move." May arrived with warmth that felt miraculous after the long winter. The forest exploded into green. Wildflowers appeared along the trails. Tourists started trickling back to Bayfield, filling Linda's diner and keeping Amanda busy with extra shifts. She was different now, not the broken woman who'd left Milwaukee in November, and not the naively trusting girl who'd married Scott. Someone in between, harder but not bitter, careful but not closed off. One evening in late May, my phone rang. Amanda's name on the screen. "Hey, sweetheart, you okay?" Her voice came through lighter than I'd heard it in years, maybe lighter than I'd heard it since before her mother died. Not exactly happy, but relieved. Hopeful. "Dad," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Something good happened today." I met someone," Amanda said. The words came through the phone with nervousness and something I hadn't heard in a long time, hope. "Tell me about him." "His name is Josh Hayes. He's 35, a landscape architect. He comes into the diner for breakfast twice a week. He's been coming for about 2 months. And last Wednesday, he asked me to coffee. Dad, he's a single father. His daughter Emma is 5. His wife died 3 years ago, car accident. He moved to Bayfield from Minneapolis to be near his parents. A widower. A father. Someone who'd known loss." "What did you tell him?" I said I needed to think about it. Then I called Dr. Carson. And then I told him yes. But I also told him everything. Just everything. About Scott, the gambling, the debt, the fraud, all of it. I told him I'm a recovering gambling addict in GA, that I filed bankruptcy 6 months ago, that my ex-husband is in federal prison, and I testified against him. What did he say? He said thank you for trusting him with the truth, that he appreciates honesty more than perfection. She laughed a little watery. Dad, he didn't run. We had coffee and talked for 3 hours. He knows I'm healing and he doesn't care about the scars. He sounds like a good man. He is. I'm not rushing into anything, I promise. But I wanted you to know. Summer arrived. Amanda worked 50-hour weeks, saving every dollar beyond basic expenses. In mid-June, she signed the lease on the studio apartment above the bookstore in Ashland. $600 a month. I'm moving in next weekend. Will you help? We moved her in 1 truckload clothes books, a used futon. She stood in the middle of the empty space, looking around with wonder. It's mine. Just mine. Nobody can take it from me. By July, she'd tracked down the 8 friends she'd borrowed money from during her worst gambling months. $30,000 total. She started paying them back, $50 here, $100 there. It's going to take me 2 years, she told me. But I'm doing it. That's character. Following through even when it's hard. Josh had become a regular presence. I'd met him twice, once picking Amanda up once at Sunday dinner. He was quiet, thoughtful, with the calm that comes from surviving grief. Emma was shy but sweet, asking if the loons were friendly. Very friendly, I told her. They just like to keep to themselves. The test came in late July. A new casino opened in Ashland. Billboards went up on Highway 2 advertising grand opening specials. Amanda called me the night before, her voice tight with panic. Dad, I can't stop thinking about it. I drove past the construction site and my hands started shaking. I almost pulled in. What did you do? Called my sponsor. We talked for an hour. She reminded me that wanting to gamble doesn't mean I'm failing. It means I'm an addict. That's right. But what if I go? What if I just walk in? Then you walk out. Call your sponsor. Go to a meeting. Start again. I kept my voice steady. Recovery isn't about never being tempted. It's about what you do when temptation shows up. The casino opened on Thursday. Amanda worked the morning shift, got off at 2, and drove straight to St. Francis Church for an emergency GA meeting. She called afterward, crying but steady. I drove past on purpose, to prove I could. Then I kept driving and went to the meeting and told them I was struggling, and they helped. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too. In early August, Josh asked to come by to talk. He showed up Saturday morning, nervous, with Emma at his parents'. We sat on the porch. He got straight to the point. Mr. Miller, I'd like your permission to ask Amanda to marry me. You've known her 3 months. I have, and I know that's fast. But I'm 35, and I've been married before. I know what I'm looking for. He met my eyes. Amanda's told me everything about her past. I know about the gambling, the debt, the manipulation. I know she's in recovery and probably will be for life. And you're okay with that? I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for honest. Amanda doesn't lie to me. She doesn't hide when she's struggling. She shows up for therapy, for meetings, for her commitments. That's the person I want to build a life with. I studied him. If you hurt her, I won't. But if I do, you'll have every right to come after me. His smile was slight but genuine. Emma needs a mother figure who'll teach her that people can change, that mistakes don't define you, that honesty matters. Amanda's that person. You have my blessing. He proposed 2 days later at the dock where Amanda and I had talked about forgiveness. Got down on one knee at sunset while Emma threw flower petals. Amanda said yes before he finished asking. The wedding was small by design. August 20th, right here at Pinewood Lodge. We set up chairs on the lawn overlooking the lake. 20 guests: Kate Reynolds, Diana Rodriguez, Linda Harris, Josh's parents, Emma as flower girl friends from Georgia, and Dr. Carson. Amanda wore a simple white dress from a second-hand shop. Josh wore a tailored suit. Emma scattered wildflowers with serious concentration. Judge Patterson, Eleanor's nephew, officiated. The vows were traditional, with one addition. Amanda insisted on, I promise to be honest even when it's hard. I promise to show up even when I'm struggling. I promise to choose us every day. Josh responded, I promise to trust you even when it's scary. I promise to stand with you especially when it's hard. I promise to choose us every day. They exchanged rings, kissed, turned to face the small gathering of people who knew their stories and loved them anyway. That evening, after the guests left, and Josh and Amanda drove to Duluth for a modest honeymoon weekend, I sat on the dock watching stars emerge. 2 years ago, I'd signed papers for this property. 39 years of savings turned into a dream I'd thought I'd enjoy alone. I couldn't have imagined what would come. The threats, the confrontation, nearly losing my daughter to predators who saw her as a tool. But I also couldn't have imagined this Amanda rebuilding herself, finding someone who valued her honesty more than perfection, standing in a second-hand dress, promising to choose love every day. The lodge that almost destroyed our relationship had become the place where we rebuilt it, where Amanda learned to stand on her own, where she married a good man in front of people who knew the worst and celebrated her anyway. Second chances. For her. For me. For us. The loons called across the water, their haunting song echoing in the darkness. I sat there until late, grateful for every hard thing that had led us here. 2.5 years had passed. I was 65 now, sitting on the dock watching Amanda teach Emma to fish. The girl was 7, gripping the rod with fierce concentration. When you feel a tug, count to 3, Amanda instructed, her voice steady, so different from the trembling woman who'd collapsed in my arms that terrible night. The line jerked. Emma counted and pulled. Together we brought in a small northern pike. She shrieked with joy. "Can we keep it, Grandpa Sean?" "Too small. We'll catch him next year when he's grown." "Promise." Amanda caught my eye. "I promise we'll keep trying," she said quietly, and I knew she wasn't just talking about fish. The transformation hadn't been quick. Those first 6 months, Amanda attended therapy 3 times a week and GA meetings every Tuesday and Thursday. I drove her to every single one until she got her license back. She rebuilt from nothing. The waitressing job at Linda's Diner started at minimum wage. Some days she came home with $18. She saved every penny in a mason jar the old-fashioned way. By month 6, she had $4,000, enough to leave. But she stayed. "I'm not running anymore," she told me one night. "Running's what got me here." Later on the porch after dinner, Amanda stayed with me while Josh took Emma inside. Josh Hayes, the landscape architect who'd been widowed before he met Amanda at a GA meeting, a good man who understood second chances. "I finished paying the debt," she said quietly. "The last $30,000, every cent. And I got accepted into the accounting program at UW Superior. Classes start in January." "That's incredible. I want to work for nonprofits helping fraud victims. Turn what happened into something that helps others." She looked at me. "I never properly thanked you for not giving up that night. When you came to the apartment and Scott tried to keep me there, you could have walked away. You're my daughter. But I'd given you every reason to. The lies, the debt, the conservatorship plan." Her voice cracked. "And you still came. That's what love is. It shows up anyway." Emma burst out. "Grandpa Sean, can I fish with you Saturday?" My heart melted. "If your dad says yes." Josh nodded. They gathered their things and left, and I was alone. But not the lonely kind, the peaceful kind. I walked to the dock as dusk settled. Loons called across the water, conversation, not loneliness. 39 years I'd worked as a structural engineer. $385,000 saved. I'd bought the Pinewood Lodge thinking I'd enjoy retirement alone. I couldn't have imagined what would come. The threats, the arrests, nearly losing Amanda to predators. But I also couldn't have imagined this, my daughter rebuilt, married to a good man, studying to help others. A granddaughter who called me Grandpa Sean, The lodge that almost destroyed us had become our sanctuary. The 6 cabins now hosted Sunday dinners, birthdays, Thanksgiving. Guest Cabin 3, where Amanda lived during her darkest months, was Emma's favorite place to play. My phone buzzed. Amanda. Can I call? Everything okay? Everything's perfect. Dad, I'm pregnant. The world tilted. Amanda. 12 weeks. You're going to be a grandfather. A real one this time. I am a real grandfather. Emma. I know. But Dad, this is, after everything, I didn't think I deserved this. You deserve it. You've earned it through every hard choice, every therapy session, every honest conversation. If it's a girl, we want to name her Grace, because that's what you gave me when I didn't deserve it. I couldn't speak. Josh calls it Grandpa Sean's dock baby, says she'll come out holding a fishing rod. I laughed, wiping my eyes. I love you, sweetheart. Love you too. See you Sunday. Sunday, every Sunday. After we hung up, I stood on the dock until full dark. Stars emerged. An eagle called. Grace. I thought about the bridges I'd built over 39 years, structures carrying thousands of people every day. I'd been proud of that work. But the bridge back to my daughter, built one conversation at a time, one choice to show up when it would have been easier to walk away, that was the greatest thing I'd ever engineered. Tomorrow morning, Emma would arrive with her fishing rod and 1,000 questions. We'd sit on this dock and cast lines into water that held northern pike and hope. She'd ask about loons and eagles. I'd answer grateful for every moment. In a few months, Amanda and Josh would bring a newborn here. Maybe Grace. This place I'd almost lost would cradle one more generation. The lodge lights glowed behind me. Sunday would bring everyone back. Saturday would bring Emma. I'd spent a lifetime building things meant to last. Now I understood the things that truly last aren't made of concrete and steel. They're made of grace extended and trust rebuilt, of Sunday dinners and fishing lessons, of second chances and as many chances as love requires. Tomorrow Emma would come. We'd cast our lines into the water one cast at a time, making up for all the years I'd missed with her mother. One cast at a time. That's how you build anything worth keeping. I'm Sean Miller, 65 years old, standing on a dock I almost lost to family betrayal I didn't see coming because I was measuring bridge stress loads instead of measuring the weight my daughter carried alone. Here's my advice. Don't be like me. Don't bury yourself in work when your family needs presents, not paychecks. Don't mistake silence for independence or pride for strength. I spent 39 years building financial security at my drafting table while my daughter built walls I couldn't see through, walls constructed from grief I never helped her process after her mother died, until predators like Roger Taylor and Scott Anderson turned those walls into weapons and my silence into their opportunity. Grandpa stories like mine happen because we ignore red flags. We're too uncomfortable to confront sudden marriages to strangers, urgent money requests framed as investments. Personality changes we explain away as stress. I saw all 3 with Amanda. I said nothing. That silence cost her $183,000 in manufactured debt and nearly cost us everything that mattered. The hard lesson. Family betrayal often starts with isolation we create ourselves. Con artists don't attack strong, connected families. They create weak, disconnected ones first. They identify the cracks, unresolved grief, loneliness, financial desperation, and pry them open. By the time Amanda knocked on my Milwaukee apartment door that October morning, she'd been isolated and manipulated for 2 years. And I didn't even know because I'd been too busy being proud of my financial discipline to notice her drowning. God gave me a second chance I absolutely hadn't earned. When I could have turned my back on her desperate plea for help and the overwhelming debt. Something deeper than my anger. Maybe grace. Maybe the ghost of the father I should have been made me investigate. Not to rescue her from consequences or enable her addiction, to stand beside her while she faced those consequences, and to dismantle the criminal system that had been exploiting her vulnerability. I've restructured the narrative viewpoint and bracketed variable content. You must modify bracketed elements for each video to prevent spam flagging. These grandpa stories matter because family betrayal through organized fraud isn't an anomaly anymore, it's an industry. 19 families across 4 states. Roger Taylor's network alone stole over $1 million. If sharing my failures as a father helps one person recognize the pattern before they lose everything, before their child loses everything, then maybe those 39 years of emotional absence weren't completely wasted. Thank you for walking this entire journey with me to its end. Drop a comment sharing your perspective. What would you do if faced with Amanda's impossible choice or a similar family crisis? I genuinely want to hear your thoughts and learn from your experiences. If this narrative resonated with you emotionally, consider subscribing so you won't miss future stories that matter. Quick note: while inspired by real fraud patterns and family dynamics documented in federal RICO cases, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling impact. If this content doesn't align with your preferences, feel free to explore other videos that suit you better. Tomorrow morning, Emma comes fishing. She'll ask about loons and eagles, and I'll answer every question, grateful for every moment. One cast at a time, that's how we heal. That's how we build bridges that last.